Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, I'm going to be covering a little bit of a sensitive topic in Leafs Nation, but it's one that I think that we all need to talk about. It's time that we had a conversation about our Willie. Last Wednesday night, I actually had the privilege of being at the home opener and seeing John Tavares named the 25th captain in Maple Leafs history. But as soon as the puck dropped and William Nylander touched it, I was reminded why I hate this fan base sometimes. It seems like in Leafs Nation that you're either for Nylander or against Nylander, and I've been sitting on that fence for so long, but the fan behind me actually knocked me off the fence and onto one particular side, and that's where the inspiration from this video comes from. And don't worry, to help me do this, I'm not just armed with this stylish scarf, I have a lot of stats. So up on the screen now is a chart of William Nylander's contract compared to other similar contracts around the NHL, and I took the liberty of putting the points per game percentage beside them, and I couldn't help but notice that among these comparables that a few of them really stick out. And I know a lot of people are judging Nylander after last season, but when you're looking at the contract, you have to understand the context of when it was signed. Nick Ehlers is where this video really starts to grow legs and hit the ground running, because he was the lower end comparable when the Nylander negotiations were going on. But when you take a closer look at his year last year and compare that to Nylander's year last year, they both are severely disappointing. Nick Ehlers signed his 7-year, $42 million contract on October 4th last year, and it's important to note that this is the regular season and playoffs combined, and even though Nick Ehlers had more points overall, it's important to note that in 6 playoff games last year, he had 0 points. And it becomes even more disappointing when you take a look at the players that Nick Ehlers was playing alongside in those playoffs. Now, I'm not saying that William Nylander had an amazing playoffs, but when you take a look at what William Nylander had to work with during those same playoffs, and you kind of start to understand why he struggled. And you're going to look at that top line with Johnsson and Matthews where he spent the majority of his ice time, but I would like to direct your attention down to the bottom of that chart where he spent Game 7 against the Bruins sandwiched between Old Man Marleau, who didn't score for almost 30 games to end last year, and Connor Brown, who was shipped out of town because he didn't produce offensively at all. And this is where the fence-sitting mentality kind of came in before last Wednesday night. On one hand, I don't really think he was put in a position to succeed, and he was dealt kind of a crappy hand because he didn't get to play with Austin Matthews on a consistent basis. And when he did, the first thing that went wrong, Babcock took him off the line long term, and then Kadri took the suspension in the playoffs, and he was forced to play center on the third line between Connor Brown and Patrick Marleau. But then on the other hand, it's like, really, you sat out for all those games, you knew what you were getting into, you made your bed, now sleep in it, score some damn goals for God's sake. And that's how I think most Leaf fans feel. But then there's a radical third perspective where some people just hate William Nylander for being William Nylander. And that started long before the contract debacle, and I think those people just used that saga to just reinforce their hate and just turned it into something that it didn't need to be. And I think the media definitely played a role in that. When you rank the core players 1 through 4, 1 through 5, however many you think there are, arguments happen. And when arguments happen, fans start to argue with what's in here rather than what's up here. And more often than not, William Nylander was compared to Mitch Marner. Up on the screen are both players' first 2 full seasons in the NHL. And when you're looking at the numbers are so close, and both players were put in offensively driven roles, that it's just amazing how radically different the opinions on these 2 players were. Where one was problematic and lazy, and the other was the heart and soul of the team. But with me being who I am, I'm not satisfied with that analysis. I need more context to those numbers that were up on the screen, because I need to definitively know which side of this debate that I'm on. So I made this little graphic here of the Maple Leafs' power play from the 2016-2017 season. And it's important because that top unit was one of the most lethal power plays in the NHL of like the last decade or something like that. They were that good. But when you're looking at the second unit that William Nylander was on, both him and Austin Matthews were in the top 25 for power play points per 60 that year. They were no slouch either. But when you look at the personnel on that second unit, you start to see a theme developing. And it's no disrespect to Leo Komarov or Connor Brown, but they're not exactly the most offensively inclined players. And then again, when you look at the 17-18 power play units and you understand that Austin Matthews missed 20 games that year, that second unit didn't really have a lot to work with. And still, the end result is this, where the numbers are so close, but the opinion of the players, again, was so drastically different. Look, I'm not trying to say that both players are still equal. Mitch Marner has run away with that race in my mind. But what I am trying to say is that wanting Nylander off the team because he had a bad year last year, or you think his contract sucks, doesn't make any sense when you look at the numbers and you look at the context. But also, it doesn't make sense from an asset management standpoint. That's what these guys are to the team. They're assets. They hold value. And if you want Nylander gone, the only way to possibly trade that contract without absolutely getting shafted in the trade is for him to play better. And if he plays better, why would you want him gone in the first place? So again, it just comes back to that perspective that people hate William Nylander for being William Nylander. And I could just sit here and talk about it over and over and over again, but I won't do that to you guys. So make sure to like the video if you did like it and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, William Nylander's got 3 points in 3 games so far this season. Give the guy a break, will ya?